Ropecon.
Good. So the way we're going to do this is very simple. I first have a short kind of background presentation thing I'm going to run through. And then after that, we're going to do it question style. Because I realized while I was doing this that I could put together a flashy 1-hour presentation with a lot of pictures and video. And I sometimes do that sort of thing. And then I also realized that my knowledge of what Finnish LARPers want, and Finnish role players, and Finnish Harry Potter enthusiasts, and Finns in general want, is very low. Which means that if I put together what I thought was the essentials and the important stuff, then there might be a lot of people sitting after an hour going, why did you not mention the characters? And that sort of thing. So instead, we're going to do it with curiosity, because hopefully most of you have heard of Claus Wizardry before. Yeah. Yes. Most of you are here because you're a little bit curious. Some. Which means that hopefully this will function with actually having some questions from the audience. And I have been told, and have known from before, that a Finnish audience may seem like they're stone cold killers, even though they're having a good time. And this makes me very happy, because it seems that right now you are engaged. You are with me on this. Even though some of you look like, I could murder this man. With no wand, that no one would notice. So that means that short intro from me, and then we'll do questions. So if you have questions, please wait until I'm done talking. And then please give them, or it will be very, very long. I'll stand up here waiting for somebody to have something. Does that work? Yeah. See, first question already gone through. Successfully. Now, the title of this is How the Hell Did LARP Suddenly End Up on Fox News? Because it did. There was a segment of Cultural Wizardry on Fox News. And to talk about that, to start from the beginning, hi, I'm Claus. I have the immense, tremendous honor of being one of the guests of honor this year, which is very, very nice. I'm very happy to be here. I was here in 2005, and I'm so glad to be invited back. So thank you for that, those of you responsible for it, and all the rest of you can take some credit as well.
That was my suggestion.
Oh,
they said,
very nice.
He's been here already. Then I said, but then College of Wizardry happened.
See,
yeah.
Very good. When I don't do College of Wizardry, where I'm the kind of main organizer and project coordinator, I do all sorts of other stuff. I do LARP professionally. I've done so since 2002. I have a small LARP production company with about 20 people that does LARPs for schools, museums, churches, banks, trade unions, whatever, and does, among other things, does College of Wizardry LARPs. We do a Downton Abbey-inspired LARP called Fairweather Manor. So if somebody has seen Downton Abbey and thinks it's too bad it's over, well, there's an option to go to Poland in a different castle and dress up in 1914. And we're running a vampire LARP later this year in cooperation with White Wolf, Convention of Thorns. So if somebody likes like medieval vampire politics, then that option is also there. And we do all sorts of random kind of big and small projects, but the most flashy ones at the moment are the big ones in Poland, of which Claus Wizardry is by far the most famous. So where did it all start? Where did this come from? First off, 4 names. How many of these names mean something to some of you? That's a pretty surprisingly high number. I am impressed. The first one, Claus, for those who don't know, is a yearly Danish war LARP. It's like a couple of hundred people, 200 to 400 adults, dress up in costume, 2 armies, and then you sit in camp, pretending to be a soldier and mostly getting drunk, and then you go out and beat each other to crap. Then you go back to camp, pretend to be a wounded soldier, mostly drink, and then you go out and beat each other up again, 5 or 6 times a day, and you do that for a weekend. And mostly they're held in the Warhammer universe, so you have people playing either orcs or chaos marauders or troops of the Empire or something that is known to a lot of people, like a live version of the Warhammer Fantasy Battle board game, where you have to move around in units and that sort of thing. We were doing, I and Hans, my partner in my company, were the organizers of Claus number 8. We decided to do something different. We decided that instead of doing this Warhammer thing, we wanted to do something that was pseudo-historical. So we got in contact with the museum and borrowed their facilities like an archaeological museum, so they've done reconstruction, Iron Age houses and like Viking stone circles and weird stuff, and we borrowed their area and made a 400-person semi-historical war for Christian crusaders going to Iceland to beat up the remaining Vikings and Freya, the last goddess of the Nordics. So on one side you had these Vikings and mythological creatures from the Nordic mythology, and the last remaining goddess. On the other side you had Danish and Swedish crusaders and some who'd been to the Holy Lands to come and beat them up. Same structure as before, mostly drinking and fighting and relaxing, but with a historical bent. And one of the things we wanted to do was to get some kind of press on this, because we wanted to show off LARP as a little bit different than what the Danish media normally thinks it is, which is children and orcs and elves. And I like children, I like orcs and elves, but when you tell somebody you're doing LARP and you say you do it in a submarine and they ask, where are the swords? It's because we have a pretty strong sword media image and a children media image. So we started doing something with the aim of getting some solid media. It happened. We managed to get on the front pages of the cultural section of one of the big newspapers, some other national press. Some of that led to me being contacted by a guy from Time magazine who wanted to write about Nordic LARP and about Danish LARP specifically. That led to being picked up. That article was read by a researcher from Discovery Channel who mailed me in late 2012 and said, I found this thing about Nordic LARP. We want to do something about it. Can we do a Discovery Channel segment on that? I said, yeah, we can do that. I'm sure we can work something out. No, those dates are bad for us. We'll do some other dates. It's fine. We can work with you. That also led to contact with the crew when we were doing Panopticorp, which is an advertising agency LARP, led to contact with the English film crew from Cosmic Joke, who have done a documentary film about both British LARP and some of the Nordic stuff. But also one of the better documentaries in recent times, which is A, not from the US, and B, features Nordic LARP, which is a lot more cool. And especially looks more cool and easier to understand for people. So the reason I tell this is because the backstory of where this came from meant that we'd gotten into contact with these people and we had gotten a little bit more media experience and a little bit more media savvy, and most of all, bigger ambitions for what we wanted with our media. Time jump, 2014, April, in Sweden, the Knudpunkt Convention. How many of you are familiar with the Knudpunkt/Solomoko? It's an inter-Nordic LARP convention where LARPers and also freeform and tabletop role players from 25, 30 countries from all over the world meet up and discuss primarily Nordic LARP. They can discuss any LARP they want, but it's primarily Nordic LARP. And at this place I met a Polish guy, Drakan Dębinski, who would later be our creative lead on the College of Wizardry. And Drakan talks a lot, and he wanted to talk to me about Panopticorp, which he'd seen a video about earlier, the Discovery Channel stuff. So he'd seen some of the media stuff we had gotten produced for some of our LARPs, and then he wanted to talk to me about doing a project together. And we were drunk, and it was 4 a.m. in the morning, where all good ideas come from. And then he started talking about Polish castles, like Germany, but at a quarter of the price. And I said, show me a castle. And then he showed a picture of Choha Castle, and then I said, what does that cost to rent? And he gave some kind of number, and I said, that's a lie. But if it's not a lie, then contact me tomorrow when we're sober, and then we'll talk. So 6 days after that, we launched the webpage for the first College of Wizardry. Drakan had pulled in some Polish people that I hadn't met or had any clue about. We hadn't seen the location. I had pulled in Charles Bo Nielsen, another Danish LARP designer who I've worked with on and off for 10 years, and who I'd just done recently the Discovery Channel program with. So we were already in tune on doing something crazy. And we put together a budget and decided that maybe, and I remember this very clearly, we were sitting there thinking maybe we can get 100 players if we're lucky. We have strong Nordic networks, we have strong international networks, we're doing something completely crazy. It cost 180 euro, which is super expensive, but still made a budget that was bad. And thought maybe in half a year, with a lot of hard work, we can get 100 players. We weren't sure about it. We were actually quite sure that it might be hard and it might fail, but we were willing to take the chance. And then we opened the webpage. We made one Facebook post on my personal wall. That was all the PR made for the LARP. unexpected. Also very nice.
Was it really? Come on, it was Harry Potter.
Somebody said no to the Beatles as well. Right?
How many players?
100 players. And then we had a waiting list with, which quickly got up, and then we opened up some more tickets. So within 72 hours, we had 138 players. And that was pretty nice. That meant we had to design the LARP itself. Because one of the things that you learn when you work professionally with LARP, and I guess you learn the same if you're like a professional movie maker or an artist of some sort, is that you go very quickly from loose talk, let's do a Harry Potter LARP, to workable concept, oh, it'll be in a castle, there'll be some classes and some houses and something, we'll figure it out later, to rough one-page pitch that people can understand and it has some nice graphics, and then somebody can say, ooh, this is nice, and then later you design the actual game. So when we released the website, and I know for some people this is like organizer heresy, and they will stone me after this is done. There are no escape routes. Okay, I made it email. For some people, this is unthinkable that you don't have everything ready when you go. But we didn't. We had a web page which said, this is not Hogwarts, it's the place you go after Hogwarts, or it's a place. And it said there's no Gryffindor, there are 5 houses at Chua instead of 4, and they're very competitive, and it's play to lose, and it's in English. Oh, and there's a castle. Here are pictures of the castle. It didn't actually say any more than that. We didn't have any rules or mechanics for spell casting. We didn't have any world description. Of course, we had the Harry Potter world, but we didn't have, it just said Choha College of Witchcraft and Wizardry is like a college where you go after Hogwarts. It didn't say more than that. It didn't say, do you get characters, do you write characters? It said there's a castle. It didn't necessarily say, where do you sleep? Do you sleep inside the castle? Do you sleep in tents? Will you get food? Yes, it said that. It didn't say a lot about what kind of food, what will actually go on. So it was very good at selling the idea, but not really promising a lot of other stuff. And then that meant we had to actually design it. And a lot of this we did together with the players of the first run, and we put together a document, a design document that was constantly growing on the webpage, and people went mad. Our players went mad, and even people who couldn't come went mad. The logo for the entire school, which we still use, was designed by a player. Like, oh, I drew this crest for the entire school. Can we use that? Yes. Now it's and so like, oh, I'm writing a school song. Okay. Got it. Can we help write characters? Yes, you can write characters. And the wonderful time when we were at the first location scout, we still haven't seen the location, by the way. We booked a castle in Poland, and we still haven't been there. So we went in June 2014, Charles and I flew down there, and met the Polish team, of which we'd only met Drakan once before, and met some of the others. And maybe we were going to hate these guys, or maybe they were going to think we were idiots, or possibly both. So it was a little bit risky doing a project involving people from different countries, different large cultures, whose only meeting had been while drunk at Tulboat. But no matter, we were doing this, it's going to be awesome. And it was. It ended up being pretty cool, and it also ended up, we had a lot of cultural barriers to cross. And one of those was when we discussed with the Polish character writing team that we want to have gender-neutral characters, because point 1, it's how it should be, if you don't need to do anything else. Point 2, it makes it a lot easier, because then you don't have to take gender into account when you're doing casting. You can just say you have a character. It doesn't really matter what the gender is, because you bring your gender with you, or you choose to have a different one. That's totally up to you. And then the Polish character writer said, yeah, that's really interesting. We don't think we can do that. Luckily, I'm a horrible kind of human person, so I said, what exactly is the problem? He said, yeah, well, but what about these things that you can't play if you're the wrong gender? I said, name one. And then they light up, they're standing on the bridge of the castle, and they're like, what if you're pregnant? To which I said, I understand. It is pretty hard being pregnant as a man, even in 2014.
But come on, the wizard.
But that would have been one good answer. The answer instead was, I agree, but if you're going to play pregnant at a LARP, don't you think you want to have chosen this yourself and not had it written randomly into your character? You are a teen mom waiting to happen. I think this is something people should at least have some influence on. And they're like, So give me one more. I guess we can write gender-neutral characters. So there was a lot of that thing that we had both parties, and especially working with location, had some conceptions of what would be possible and what would not be, not necessarily based on we couldn't do it, but just that it was unusual. And a lot of the stuff we made up on the fly was during that June trip that we found the magic system, which was basically point at somebody and say, listeners, and then hope the person you point at will think, that means I should listen, or I'm going to decide to listen, or that's really boring, I'm not going to listen. So this very, very simple way of doing things and very intuitive turned out to be a really big strength of the LARP, but it was not planned from the beginning. That was kind of tagged on later. Felt we can always make a magic system. That's not really important for a magical LARP. Then after the LARP, things got a little bit crazy because we had gotten some of the people we'd worked with on the other projects, we had gotten them to join up. The Cosmic Joe crew who'd done the Treasure Trap documentary, and we'd had them at Penalty Corp. I wrote them and said, hey guys, my next big project is going to be a castle in Poland, the Harry Potter thing. Do you want to come? We're not paying you anything, but you can have a place to sleep and we'll give you food. They're like, yeah, we can do that. That sounds fun. Maybe it'll turn out to be something. Who knows? It'll be a good trip anyway. And there were a couple of photographers I knew from other projects. I said, there's no pay involved, but do you want to come take pictures? And they said, yeah, great. We'll come take pictures. And then the LARP happened. The LARP was pretty good. There were a lot of people. We even did a survey. A lot of people said, oh, this was my best LARP ever. I had a great experience. Or everyone, the castle was very nice, even though the organizers were idiots. That sort of thing. People were very positive. But that didn't really matter that much. What did matter in the big scheme was that when the photographers came home, they published their pictures, and people started sharing them like crazy on Facebook. Suddenly, most of the people who'd been there were commenting in all the albums, and they were changing their profile pictures, and they were writing stuff to, and everyone who had not been there was getting a little bit annoyed at it, because it was all over the fucking place. 140 people in a lot of interlocking social circles, most of them from Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Norway, and some few others. A lot of them know the same people, or some of the same people. So for a while, Facebook was a little bit crazy. Then some other people started picking it up, and we started getting some media attention from blogs and like small nerd media. And that was pretty nice. Then Cosmic Joke, the film crew, came out with their 1 minute 40 trailer using the Harry Potter music, even though I told them specifically not to do that. They said, it's our film, not yours, you're not paying us. Okay. So they used the official Lumos theme from Harry Potter for the thing, saying, we know how YouTube licenses work, you can go fuck yourself. Okay. And then that movie got shared by people, like a lot. And some people know people who work in media, and some people in media started putting it on websites, because it was very easy. It was Harry Potter. There was nice video. It looked pretty nice. There was nice music, because we stole the music. When I say we, I mean Cosmic Joke. I take no responsibility. I tried to talk them out of it. It was mail proof.
That's what you say.
Then it got picked up by bigger nerd media. Then it got picked up by mainstream media. And then suddenly it hit MTV.com, where there was an article about you can be a real wizard in Poland. That got 37,000 shares on Facebook. It's a little bit more than when I share stuff on my phone. That got picked up by other bigger media. And suddenly things went completely crazy. And this was in the beginning of December 2014, when my life took a little bit of an unexpected turn to the more bizarre. So my phone would ring and it would be a number from the US, and I'm like, okay, hello, this is Klaus. Normally I answer in Danish because I live in Denmark, but the number in the US probably doesn't call in Danish. And we're like, yeah, this is Teresa from People Magazine. Can we do an interview? I said, yeah, sure we can. Send me a mail. And then I asked my wife, because they call it some ungodly hours, and Marie, People Magazine. Have you heard of that? I'm like, People fucking Magazine? Google People Magazine, find out it's read by 46 million people. Okay, we can do that. And from there it spread. So one thing is some of the big Western media that had some clue maybe of what was going on. But suddenly we had a fan club in Peru. We had 2,000 people on our we could track traffic on our page. There have been 2,000 people from Taiwan on the page within a few days. And things got a little bit weird when they got to here. This I had not seen coming. This was not in my general understanding of where you read about larps. Who was pranking me on this? It turned out there was an article in Teen Vogue article in Vanity Fair. There's an article in the USA Today. There was a morning segment. It was even on Fox News. Die Welt had an article about it where they, in German, discussed how it was bad school because it didn't teach people good things like math and literature, but taught literature skills.
Arithmetic, that's kind of like math.
Yeah, I wish. And when we did the follow-ups, we did number 2 and 3, and opened sign-ups, and we broke the ticket servers for Biletto. The tickets for number 3 were sold out in 90 seconds, and a major Danish newspaper did an article about a player getting a ticket. That was the article. And then it also hit some weird places, like the Warsaw Metro has these nice info screens, and they were playing the trailer. And the Danish Metro was doing the same. You were sitting in the Metro, and suddenly the trailer was playing on it, like, okay, this is strange.
Free publicity.
Free publicity, and it was going crazy, and we were thinking, this is going to be good. We can, if we announce 10 LARPs, they're going to be sold out like tomorrow. We're getting some Canadian player who works with social media told me something about how many social media impressions we got, and the numbers meant nothing to me, but 3 million, that sounded like it. So. Then we called Warner Brothers, because it turns out that Harry Potter is intellectual property of somebody else. Who'd know, right? And normally when we do LARPs and role-playing games, this is not something that bugs us. Nobody cares. J.K. Rowling doesn't care if there are 40 Finnish teenagers running around in the forest, all of them pretending to be Ron, or have a crush on Ron, or polymorph into Ron, or something to do with Ron. Too many laughs on that one. I know who you are. Yep. So we called Warner Brothers, because we thought better call them before they call us. And first off, we called J.K. Rowling, and she didn't pick up the phone. I think she doesn't do that a lot. But we called her publisher, and they said, you should talk to our lawyers. Then we talked to lawyers. Hi, this is Claus from the Claus Wizardry project. I should talk to some lawyers. And then they said, oh, interesting. Yeah, we've heard of you. You should talk to Warner Brothers legal department. Because apparently in the world of law, the publishers of Harry Potter do not have the rights to anything but the books anymore. So it means that somebody who does LARP events, nobody knows who has the rights to that, but they think Warner Brothers does, because Warner Brothers has film rights and event rights and that sort of stuff. And of course we could challenge them and say, actually, you don't have those rights. But it's not like there's a list somewhere where you can see precisely who has the rights to what. And we asked a Danish IP lawyer I happen to know, and he said you could probably win the case if you went into a fight against them. It would cost 250,000 Danish kroner in Denmark, about 35,000 euro. And I don't know how much in Poland, and let's not even talk about the US. That's if you win. Okay. We're not going to get into a fight with anyone. So we called Warner Brothers to talk to them about possibilities of cooperation, and mainly to make sure that we weren't getting into trouble. And there was this nice dramatic moment when we were giving them the call, and Anders Parker was filming the thing, and we were standing outside the movie theater, we just seen a movie, and the situation was tense, and I was stressed, and I hadn't really slept, and then it turns out that because I hadn't really calculated summertime into it, or wintertime, their offices didn't open until an hour later. That was a little bit of a setback. But what they said was basically, yes, it's fine what you've done. You've also given us free publicity. Yes, it's fine, you're doing number 2 and 3 that are already sold out. Please don't do any more, or there will be trouble. Okay. We'll do our totally own thing, which is not Harry Potter, which is like Harry Potter-ish. And that's where we are now. Shift away from Harry Potter. We did a Kickstarter campaign and decided we're not going to do Harry Potter anymore. We're going to do our own fictional universe, which of course has strong Harry Potter elements. So the game experience was pretty much the same, but changed the fictional story and wrote a lot of this is not Harry Potter.
Inspired by.
Inspired by, among other things. And we've been doing that since. We've run 8 of them so far. 9 and 10 are happening later this year. 11 is happening in March next year, which has sold about half of the tickets to that. There have been spin-off events. There's a German version coming. The American spin-off New World Magiscola is running their 4th event in this weekend. They sold out their Kickstarter. They raised as much money as we did in 2 months. They did that in half an hour, because in the US, people don't want to travel to Europe, and they like Kickstarter. So, but that's really cool. That's now been played by 600 players or so over there. So it's kind of spread it directly and indirectly. Oh, yeah, there are chickens. Plenty of people who haven't been there.
I wanna. I don't have money.
Now to some of the stuff that happened with this. Suddenly people didn't necessarily understand what we were doing, because the more it reached out, of course, if one of you reads an article about a LARP in Poland, then there's a good chance that while you may disagree on game design or think that written characters are necessarily 10 pages long and not 1 page, then you at least have a basic idea of what's going on. And the further this got from our own circles, the more it became weird. This is not a question we have gotten once, or twice, or 10 times. It's an interesting question. The Indian trade newspaper, which wrote and said, blah, blah, we are an Indian trade newspaper, we have 100 million readers. Interesting. We would like to talk to you via a phone interview, and I had to sign a contract before we did the interview that I didn't understand half of, but thought, sure, it's going to be fine. And then the interview was done, and I explained to the guy what it was. It was clear he had no clue as to what LARP was. And then I said, okay, this is how it works, and does that make sense? And yes, yes, sir, it makes very good sense. And after the call, I felt, see, I really explained that. Then I talked to people I know who have worked with Indian companies, which turns out that there's this small thing with Indian communication is that it's really not good to say no. And if somebody asks you if something makes sense and you say no, then you're a stupid idiot, so you just say yes, yes. So probably they had no clue what was going on. It just went, yes, yes, sir, this is very good article. And I have no idea whatever came out of it. But that sort of thing kept happening. Not just the Indians, but people who had weird ideas. The personal favorite and highlight being Thomas White Eagle. Thomas White Eagle is a shaman who lives in Peru. And Thomas White Eagle, according to his very, very interesting webpage, which was made in the 90s, probably, teaches these spiritual, magical courses in Peru. And he wanted to come teach at the college because he felt he was interested. And I wrote, Dear Thomas White Eagle, thank you for your interest. Sadly, we are not a real magical college, smiley, but we are people who like to dress up and pretend to be witches and wizards. And then he wrote back, oh, I understand. However, I'm sure that anyone participating in such an event secretly has a wish to learn magic. So I will gladly still come and teach, like probably at a reduced fee or something. And then the really good part of the mail was, real magic, of course, takes longer than 4 days to teach, actually between 3 and 20 years. And I thought that was weirdly specific, that it's not like it takes a long time, but it's between 3 and 20 years to learn real magic. So if any of you feel like you want to learn real magic, this is the guy.
You've still got his contact information, right?
Oh, yes. It's since spread to even after we went away from Harry Potter. A couple of months ago, I got a mail from an advertising company in Hong Kong. They wanted us to come to Hong Kong and do a College of Wizardry event in a mall. And I did a call with the guy, and it was also clear he didn't really know what was going on, but he felt this was interesting. And there was no yes, yes, sir, but more like, whoa, that's weird, but it's probably cool. We're looking for new things. And I said, I should make sure at this point that you understand that we can't do Harry Potter events. Like, no, not Harry Potter. College of Wizardry. People want something new. So, it didn't happen, sadly. Their customer bowed out. But just the fact that somebody wrote a mail from Hong Kong saying, we don't want you for your Harry Potter thing, we want you for the thing you're doing now, was pretty cool. Enough talk about all this stuff. This is history. The really interesting stuff is why did this happen? What made this LARP be the one that went viral and crazy and got more press than more or less all other LARPs combined? Because it was on truly massive, epic scale. Why this? Why not something that's a lot cooler, like Finnish Halatizar, which is political, interesting, and good pictures? Or why not just Loving, which is about AIDS in the 80s and the gay scene in New York, and is an interesting story and a lot deeper and more emotional and powerful? Why not something completely different? Why this? First of all, we had awesome documentation. People are usually really bad at doing documentation for LARPs. There's this idea that no, if we let in a photographer, the immersion will be broken. This is sometimes true. But on the other hand, it's a lot easier remembering afterwards and talking to other people if there are pictures. And if there is a video crew to film stuff. And if somebody puts together a 20-minute documentary with player interviews and nice moving pictures from the thing, it's a lot easier for people who weren't there to understand it a little better. We can discuss it, we can spread it, we can talk about it, we can point to people and say, see, this was fucking awesome. Instead of saying, I was out playing with my friends, it was an intense experience. Oh, can you show a picture? No.
Was it cinema quality, the video and the pics?
It was not cinema quality, but it was high-scale TV quality.
Yeah.
So not cinema, but good enough. It was documentation quality. So you couldn't really tell the difference between this, some of the good footage, and like any other documentation movie.
So it was professionally done?
Yes. The Cosmic Joke crew are professional, the film crew. They normally do documentaries and music videos. And of course, this was like low light shot, hip shooting, crazy stuff all over the place, but it looked pretty good. If you haven't already seen it, then I would recommend seeing one of the two documentaries we've done about it, or some of the other stuff. Looks good. Second, easily understood concept. What is the concept of most LARPs? Well, a lot of them are a little bit weird to explain. Somebody will start explaining about, you see, in the realm of chaos, the Dark King Landibor has 5 spirit stones, and we, the elf princes, must... What's the LARP about again? And it might be a good LARP, but nobody understands at a glance. This was easy. This was Harry Potter in a real castle. And people were like, wow. It was that easy to sell the idea. And this, of course, worked for the LARPers, even because we weren't really giving them any more info, so if that didn't work, well, it could work. There was no long story. But it also works for normal people who don't know anything about LARP. Playing Harry Potter in a real castle sounds pretty nice, and it's easy to understand. Playing Downton Abbey in a real castle, or something with a real castle. You see the theme. Then it was also easy for people logistically. There was a bus from the airport. There was a pick up and play thing. You got a costume. You had to take your basic thing, but you got a school robe and a tie. And you could just show up like this if you wanted to, because it takes place in present day. So it was just as okay to show up in a leather jacket and cowboy pants as it was to show up in like a weird 40s outfit or a magical robe from your fantasy book. All 3 things work, because the Harry Potter universe and later the Culture Wizardry universe are very flexible when it comes to costumes. So that's easy. The characters were written for people, and if they didn't like it, they could just throw them over their shoulders and change them. It says in our documents, you can change the character. It's okay. The LARP will not suffer. You've got a bed to sleep in. You've got food. As one of our players said, you only have to bring your wand and a toothbrush. And the wand could be just a wooden stick from the forest. And we even have wands to borrow up. We don't have borrow-up toothbrushes yet, but I'm sure that's something that's fixable. So it's pretty simple, and you don't need to lug a ton of armor or a medieval tent or a dragon or whatever you need for LARPs these days. I'm glad some people were old enough to laugh at dragon.
Build your own village.
And that's what made it. Not so much, it wasn't that it was the best idea ever, it wasn't that it was the best LARP ever, it wasn't even that we were the best organizers or the smartest or had the best players, because one of the things that a lot of the people who have talked about it or played it since forget is that even if the LARP had been shit, even if it had been horribly boring, and all the players who came home were like, this was the worst experience of my life, then it would still look good on the pictures. It would still sound good when we talked about it in interviews, definitely. And it would still look good in the video. We just would have to cut down on the player interviews to like none of them. But the documentation, for the wider audience, the documentation matters a lot more than the actual quality of the LARP. Luckily, this was, to all intents and purposes, a pretty good LARP for the people who were there. And the subsequent ones have been as well. That's why people keep coming back. But for getting the idea out, and for having this truly viral effect, that didn't really matter. So, question on there, where do we go from here? Well, I promised there was plenty of time for questions. And even though I talked a lot longer than I was planning to, we still have time. Yes?
Hello, thank you for an excellent presentation. Will the Convention of Thorns be played in the same castle?
No. We use a new castle for each fiction.
A castle for you. Castle for you.
We're currently working with 5 different Polish castles and a German historical sailing ship. We hope to add to that an American battleship and an old monastery. For now.
What will come back?
What?
Is it because you are the welcome back?
We are very welcome back. The Choha Castle, which we work with on College of Wizardry, not only are we their biggest customers, We rent out the castle like 4 to 6 times a year with full food and full board for 140 people. They have no other customers who are near that size, so they like us a lot for that. Plus, the image value they got out of Claus Wizardry was pretty crazy. According to some Polish media experts that we got some inside info from, they went from being a Polish castle to being the most famous international Polish castle. And that's pretty crazy. So, of course, it also meant that after that December media storm, when we were on our first scouting trip down there looking at other castles and other, like Nazi gold mines and that sort of thing, for future projects, everybody knew who we were. That was nice. And they wanted to work with us because everyone wanted to have their location for tourists on Fox News. Maybe not Fox News, but everyone wanted a piece of the action. And we have people now who go to Choha Castle to visit it as tourists outside the larps because it's the Harry Potter castle. So, of course, the locations are very, very interested in getting us. Just like there are a lot of conference centers in Finland who would love to host Ropecon.
How much can you tell us about the fiscal side?
The fiscal side?
Yeah.
Oh, I can tell you a lot. The first one, we put together a budget that was, everyone was working as full-time volunteers. Nobody was getting paid for it. It cost 180 euro per person. And the budget was made so that if we ran 3 volunteer fundraiser logs for kids at home, then we could just make it even if everything went well. We ended up losing about 8,000 euros, and luckily we had a strong organization backing us, but that was not the best fiscal, because every time a new idea came up, we said, more, wilder, better. We started out by thinking, okay, we're going to have these cheap, like, really cheap, lousy robes for people, and they're pretty cheap. And then suddenly everyone was signed up, and the hype was going crazy, and we were getting a lot of attention. Then we realized we need more expensive. Let's triple the robe budget. But there is no thing to triple it from. Let's do it anyway. Let's have a book. Let's do monsters. Let's go completely nuts on it. And we did. So it started out making a pretty solid minus. A minus that a lot of larps wouldn't be able to cover because they don't have a strong organization backing them. Number 2 and number 3, we're still done as volunteer productions. We had hired 2 people, 2 of the Poles, and Charles, my co-game master from Denmark, had been hired to do this. So they were working on it professionally while the rest of us were still doing volunteer work. The team was like 25 people or so. And they managed to get in the money that we had lost on the first one. So after cow 1, 2, and 3, we were like at a 0 overall. By then, of course, my megalomania had set in, and I had hired 4 Poles full-time, plus Charles, and was looking at hiring more. And we were also looking at doing more larps, and I had bought the Poles an office, which they now have. Because, of course, when they started talking about, oh, we had this dream of one day having our office. Here is the office. Expand out of the crisis. And now we have a full-time team working on it professionally, and that team consists of people from primarily Poland, also some from Denmark, and our guy from Tanzania. We have a Tanzania division. You should have a Tanzania division, right?
Is it Stefan?
It's Stefan. He's German, and he's spearheading our Polish invasion of Germany from Tanzania. Not the usual way you do things in that way in that corner of Europe, but well, you've got to begin with it. And everybody there is working on this full time. And they're also working on other projects. So the overall fiscal economy is that if we can pull off about 10 of these a year, or something of similar size and scope, then it more or less kind of rolls around. And we've not gotten there yet, but we're working on it. We're also slowly raising the prices a little bit. The Vampire LARP Convention Thorns cost more than Claus Wizardry does. Claus Wizardry costs about twice what it did for the first one. So things are slowly moving towards more sustainable. But right now it's still dependent on a lot of goodwill, a lot of volunteer labor, and a lot of long, long hours. But it's a start.
Are you doing any RD to expand the franchise?
Yes, but our problem is that we're crazy idealists, and that's a problem. For example, we're not getting any money from the Americans, who are now have created a company to run the American version. Because we started by using somebody else's IP, and I would feel a little bit like an idiot if I said, now you're using ours, you need to pay. Just like we didn't. And when say, can we do something in the universe? Yes, of course you can. It's a shared playground. It's co-created. Sadly, that doesn't really pay bills, but in the long run, it might.
Yes, I was in House 6 and 8, and I think it was like 40% first-timers?
For Cal 6, we had 40% first-time players.
Is that consistent?
Swings a little bit, but we have a large number of first-time players. We usually have between 20 and 40% first-time players.
Like people who have never
Who have
LARPed.
never LARPed before.
Yeah.
And some of them come from places where they're like, okay, LARP is a thing. If you're from Finland and you've never LARPed, there's a good chance you've heard about it. While if you live in Brazil, then the chances are lower. So we have people coming from very different cultures with no LARP experience and with no pre-understanding of what LARP is before they stand there. And the loveliest thing is seeing them come into the hallway and seeing somebody from the documentary and going, oh my God, Professor something, she's real. Yep, we've been there.
What's the future of College of Wizardry? Are you going to keep doing it like 100 LARPs or something? Or
Yes, hopefully. The future is the plan with what we call the blockbuster division, because we have absolutely no shape, is that we want to run
Graduation.
well, that too. But we want to run a series of LARPs in different universes, all of kind of the same crazy scope and ambition level. And if some of them become more popular, then we run more than one a year, like we're running 4 cows at the moment. If some become less popular, then they kind of drop out of like a movie theater that has its movies going. So the hope is to produce these things and make them run again. So for Cow, the plan is hopefully to be able to run at least 4 a year, and also run the German spin-off Cow Nibelungen, which just ended its crowdfunding yesterday, and got enough money to get us the pool, which is very nice. There's a pool at that castle. And we're also doing stuff for boarding schools. The 2 LARP boarding schools in Denmark, Bristolskov and Ipos, are going there for their study trips. So right now we're running like 6 to 7 cows a year, and we hope to be able to do that, if not scaling up, plus the other projects we do. So there's a lot of field time when working with this full time.
Nice.
Yes, and a lot of travel. Yes.
You ran into trouble with Warner Brothers. They didn't give you any permissions, though, which I guess in the end was a good thing. But did they at all specify, like, why should you have contacted them before you had to, like, concretize to the idea at all, or
No, they
are
basically,
they just very anal about their lives?
they basically said it's really surprising that an event that small has got that much media impact, which is true. I mean, 140 people running around at what's basically a private dress-up party is, if you're at the size of Warner Brothers, that's nothing. That's less than nothing. But it has still gotten all the media attention. So they didn't have any illusions that we should have contacted them, because it was just basically a fan event gone amok. But they had discussions internally whether they wanted to work with us, because of course we said the dream for us is to work with you, and either you give us money or we give you money, but no matter what, we want to do this with an official stamp, or at least that you don't shut us down. And they said no. And the reason they did that is because it's new, and it's going to happen at some point. At some point, somebody, maybe somebody else, is going to get that deal with one of the big IPs. He's going to do Star Wars Jedi Academy, or the official Game of Thrones LARP, where one of the actors appears and plays their character, or something like that. It is going to happen, because it's happening already on a lower scale. We already work with the biggest fantasy author in Denmark, which is one of the biggest authors in Denmark, period. And we've done LARPs and LARP projects together with her. But that's just not a big international IP. So it's going to happen, and it means that while it didn't happen this time, because they were afraid of it happening, it's an uncontrollable thing, and you're not really comfortable with that if you have books or films at your disposal that are very one-way instead of two-way. But it is going to happen.
Well, isn't Star Wars happening?
Not as a large yet. Not as a big officially, I mean, there are plenty of people who do Star Wars LARPs, but there is no official cooperation Star Wars LARPs. None of them are big enough to be on the radar, because if they were, they would be squashed.
Have you contacted Disney yet?
Oh, it will have, yeah, in the future, yes, and I hope that it will be the ones doing Jedi Academy in 2021. Probably not.
It's not like a question.
That's okay.
I work in business modeling, and the challenge you have when you're a small company talking to a big company, and you're doing something completely new, is that internally in the big companies, they have no way of pricing you. There's no way they can actually put the price tag. They have no experience, nobody knows anything. They can just make up a number, and that's probably as good as any other number. But what they're afraid of, internally due to internal politics, is to price you low. Because then you get into trouble later because you sold out. You sold out your IPR rights at the cheapest price, and you sort of level at that point. So it's safer from a sort of corporate internal politics point of view to just say no. And that's the hard part about doing anything that's different than you when you sort of go into large companies. They're just so then they're afraid of anything different because it affects the politics.
Very insightful and very true. And that means that we need to move slowly, because once we get to the next step of the ladder, then there's a chance to move upwards from that. So maybe, some LARPs have done this, have gotten away with it, even without permission. They've had support. The Battlestar Galactica LARP, Monitor Celestra, had, not only did it have the guy playing one of the main characters, following the Twitter feed, but they've also been to like official conventions with the people behind the films and the TV series, and have gotten like, why didn't you call us? We would have been there. The Hell on Wheels Western TV show has a Czech LARP that's run modeled after that. And they've been mentioned on the Hell on Wheels TV series official blog. Here are pictures from this crazy fan event. They are awesome, but they're still a little bit lower than this is. So I think the problem from that sort of thing is that we tried to move too fast, and it wasn't because we did it on purpose. We just made LARP like we make LARPs, and then it just blew up. But if we're going to reach the big players, then we need to make them less afraid, and that means they need to be able to look at something a little bit smaller and then say, okay, so these guys did this, we can maybe jump on that wagon too. But right now, we're just too small to be noticed by something like Warner Brothers, in a good way.
Okay, at the start of the talk, you just mentioned that you're making LARPs for churches.
Yes.
What?
What? Yes. Our biggest customer in Denmark is the Danish church. I count among my personal friends the Bishop of Roskilde, whose 60th birthday I was to not too long ago.
Why?
Well, point one, they pay and Brent doesn't pay itself. Point two, the church is in Denmark. It's not super progressive as a cultural institution, but it's pretty progressive compared to other churches. One of the reasons being that, as one of the people we work with says, the Protestant church in Denmark has 3,000 popes. Because if you're a Protestant minister in Denmark, you don't answer to anyone, roughly. And that's pretty nice because it gives you a lot of flexibility, but it means that nothing ever moves at a fast pace because everyone will disagree on everything. It does mean that there are priests who are up for doing things that are pretty radical and interesting. So we use LARPs as a form of educating people who go through their confirmation studies, or like kids who are going to stuff, or even priests to teach them how to teach in a different way or preach in a different way. And what we usually do is stuff like ethical dilemmas, or instead of just saying the Bible says this, you should do that, instead of saying you're in this situation, what do you do? But Jesus says, yeah, but you're not Jesus. Okay, I kill you.
But no wizards in the religious.
Oh, yeah. Sure. No problem. It depends on the setting, and some of the stuff we've done is pretty wild. We've done, I think the most flashy thing we've done is do a Warhammer 40K Penal Legion LARP inside a big Copenhagen church where somebody was executed by a commissar in the church. That was So, I don't know much about the Finnish church, but I know that the Danish one is, in some places, very conservative, and in some places, not so conservative. And it's being used both by us and by others. There are also people who are a lot more attached to the church that use LARP as a teaching method. Because even though we might feel that we own it as a medium, we don't. Anybody can do it. It's not like nobody can do movies but Hollywood. It doesn't work that way. Neither does it with LARPs. Did that answer the why a little? Yeah. A little, not a lot.
Yes, sir.
You didn't get any fundamentalists?
No, not yet.
Telling that you're
And at some point we'll probably run into...
Satan or something.
No. And at some point we'll probably run into customers we don't want. Like we will have some neo-Nazis wanting to do a LARP about why it's really, really good not to be a Jew. We haven't really gotten there yet. So.
Denmark doesn't have the same thing that Finland had, that like LARP is part of Satanism.
Well, it was at some
But since it's used in education,
it's
long gone.
No, there's been an active crusade for many, many years, and not just by me, but by many, many people, sometimes in coordination, sometimes just happening organically, to change the image of LARP in Denmark and to spread the gospel, which leads to the fact that, one, Denmark is by far the country in the world that has the most LARPers per population unit, which is roughly about 2% or so. That's roughly 100,000 or so. Two, the media image is very, very positive. I've had the pleasure of talking LARP with 3 government ministers and have been quoted by our Minister of Culture several times on how to teach orcs democracy. It's a simple go-to example. If the orcs vote about everything, then you teach children how to actually do the act of voting. So when they reach the age of 18 and they get to vote for real, they will have training in actual things like voting, caucusing, and doing stuff. And because it's fun for orcs, and orcs vote about meaningful stuff, not things like who are we going to elect, but things like, are we going to eat the elves for pizza, or are we going to build the base? And the answer is usually eat the elves for pizza. But it's a meaningful vote. But that's a completely different talk that I'll gladly give, but probably not.
Just getting time for the next program, so...
So then I should round this up, because it seems we have 2 minutes left before I should exit the stage.
No, actually...
What?
No, actually, it's 15 at past. You should.
So I should have shut up long
Yes.
Yes. That's the nice thing about the Finnish or dead face, is that nobody will tell you that sort of thing until it's way too late.
Yes,
Ropecon.